So if you look at a classic brick building, a deep red, perfectly coursed brick wall, your brain just sort of automatically registers permanence.
Right, yeah, it feels solid.
Exactly. It looks like a fortress. You see those unmoving lines and you inherently trust the structure. I mean, it just feels completely invincible.
Well, that illusion of permanence is incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
mostly because we naturally associate stone and masonry with geologic time, like it's going to last forever.
Right.
But the moment you drop that brick structure into a coastal environment, specifically the hyper-aggressive climate of Portland, Maine,
Yeah.
that timeline accelerates violently. I
Yeah.
mean, it is the absolute definition of an active, microscopic battle zone.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. Welcome, everyone. We are taking this really fascinating stack of materials you, our listener, sent in. It's a comprehensive website and a series of detailed blog posts by John Constantine from Portland Chimney Service.
Yeah, it's a great collection of sources, very detailed.
Oh, for sure. And, to the uninitiated, this might just look like a standard guide to local home repair in Portland. But the mission of our deep dive today is to uncover the intense, unseen battle between architecture and the elements. We're going to explore the physics, the chemistry, and the structural high stakes of what it really takes to keep a home standing in a harsh coastal environment.
Yeah, and to truly grasp the stakes of this, you really have to place yourself in the environment we're analyzing here. So imagine you're standing near the Eastern Promenade in Portland, Maine,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
right? And it's the dead of January. You've got this biting wind whipping directly off Casco Bay. And that air isn't just freezing cold, it is heavily saturated with marine salt.
Ugh, brutal.
It is. And then you factor in the punishing nor'easters that roll through, carrying driving horizontal sleet. It's a hyper-aggressive climate that treats a home's exterior, especially a masonry chimney sticking up from the roof, like a literal stress test.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how professionals fix a chimney, we first have to understand exactly how the coastal Maine winter destroys it. And, I want to push back on a common assumption here. Wait, isn't brick supposed to be hard and waterproof?
That's what most people think, yeah.
But based on the text, we shouldn't be treating the chimney like a solid stone tower.
Hmm.
We need to look at it like a giant vertical sponge standing on the roof.
A very heavy sponge.
Oh,
Yeah, the physics of it are pretty wild. A single standard brick can actually absorb up to 1.5 cups of water.
wait, really? 1.5 cups, just one brick?
Just one brick. So multiply that by the thousands of bricks making up a massive Victorian chimney. You're suddenly talking about dozens of gallons of water just suspended in the masonry.
Wow.
And in Portland, you have these wet autumns, plus the constant coastal humidity. So that vertical sponge is completely saturated long before the deep freeze even sets in.
And that leads right into the freeze-thaw cycle, which anyone who has ever accidentally left a soda in the freezer knows what happens. Water expands by roughly 9% when it turns to ice.
Right, exactly. But we aren't just talking about a little surface frost here. This is cumulative hydraulic pressure trapped inside fired clay. The true danger is that microscopic expansion.
That's like a slow-motion jackhammer.
That's a great way to put it. When temperatures drop, that water expands and exerts tens of thousands of pounds of outward pressure. And it causes what professionals call spalling.
Spalling, that's when the faces literally pop off the bricks and litter the lawn, right?
Yes. But before you get to that dramatic point, there are warning signs. The text mentions things like dark water stains on the living room ceiling or efflorescence.
Efflorescence,
Yeah.
that's the white powdery stuff you sometimes see on brick.
Yeah, exactly. Looks like chalk, but it's actually salt left behind by evaporating water. It's a screaming red flag of moisture infiltration. The water moves through the brick, dissolves natural salts, and leaves them on the surface when it evaporates.
So it means water is moving completely through the structure.
What's fascinating here is that we tend to visualize weather damage as surface erosion, like wind wearing down a rock.
Yeah.
But this continuous cycle literally dissolves the chimney from the inside out. Water gets in, freezes, expands 9%, makes new microcracks, melts, goes deeper, and freezes again.
It's just compounding damage.
Exactly.
Now that we know water is actively exploding the bricks, let's look at the glue holding them together. Because if your mortar is bad, a quick trip to the hardware store will actually make the problem so much worse.
Oh, absolutely. DIY repairs here are a disaster.
The sources say that when mortar deteriorates to a depth of 6 millimeters or more, water basically gets free rein. And they have this great analogy. Slapping caulk on a crumbling joint isn't a repair. It's like putting a bandage on a bullet wound.
Yeah, caulking is the terrible idea. It traps the moisture inside.
Yeah.
The real solution is tuck pointing. And I should clarify, this isn't just patching. It's a highly skilled restoration process. You have to grind out the damaged mortar to a uniform depth and then replace it so it perfectly matches the original masonry's color and consistency.
But wait, let me ask the obvious question. Why can't a homeowner just mix up some modern mortar from the store and fill in the gaps themselves? I mean, modern stuff is stronger, right?
It is stronger, and that is exactly the problem. It comes down to the geology of the main materials and the precise mix ratios required. Historic homes, like those 19th century Victorians in the West End, they use soft red bricks,
Okay.
and they were built with high-lime mortar that is softer than the brick. It acts like a cushion when the wall expands and contracts. If
Yeah.
you apply a modern Portland cement that is harder than the historic brick,
The brick can't handle the pressure.
exactly, the modern mortar won't give. So during the next tree cycle, the brick will actually crack before the mortar does. By trying to upgrade the joint, you destroy the brick itself.
That is wild. The fix is actually the thing that breaks it.
Yeah, it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And there's a distinction in the text we should mention. Repointing versus tuck pointing.
Oh, right. What's the difference there?
Well, repointing is the general repair of the joints to restore the vertical load-bearing capacity. Tuck pointing is more of an aesthetic trick. They use two colors of mortar, a base that matches the brick, and a thin contrasting line down the middle. It creates the illusion of very fine, precise joints, even if the bricks are totally weathered and irregular.
Oh, that's clever. Okay, so we've armored the outside of the chimney against the rain and the ice. But as we transition inside the house, we find that the fire meant to keep the home warm is secretly creating a massive internal hazard. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, we're moving from physics to chemistry now.
Right. As the smoke rises up the chimney and hits the cold air near the top of the stack, it condenses, and it turns into creosote.
Yes, and creosote is highly flammable. This is why the National Fire Protection Association, or the NFPA, has their 211 standards. They strictly mandate annual inspections.
Because it builds up so fast?
Exactly. And the text details these three terrifying stages of creosote buildup. Stage 1 is basically just soot. It's like a velvety powder. Pretty easy to sweep out if you catch it.
But if you don't,
Then the heat from your next fire bakes that soot. And it turns into stage 2, which are these crunchy, highly porous flakes.
crunchy flakes. Smells awful.
It gets worse. Because those flakes trap heat, they accelerate the baking process, which leads to stage 3. So this is a highly dangerous one. It's a heavily glazed solid tar. It literally looks like black glass coating the inside of your chimney.
Wow. And you can't just brush that out.
No, absolutely not. A regular brush just slides right over it. You need industrial-grade rotary brushes like chains that beat it off the walls and heavy-duty HEPA vacuums to capture the toxic dust. If you don't clear it, a single spark can cause a massive chimney fire. Plus, it chokes the draft, so smoke and carbon monoxide back up into your living room.
And the sources point out that old Maine chimneys make this even riskier. They were built with clay tile liners, or sometimes no liners at all, just bare brick.
Yeah, that's a huge liability today. Those old clay liners just cannot handle the high-efficiency demands of modern appliances.
Because modern stoves send cooler exhaust up the flue, right?
Right. Modern stoves extract so much heat into the room that the exhaust is cooler and much wetter. It dumps acidic moisture onto those old clay tiles, and combined with the salt-heavy humidity of Portland, the clay just crumbles.
So what's the fix?
The only real solution is upgrading to a continuous stainless steel chimney liner. It's mandatory to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning and structure fires.
Okay. So we've looked at the microscopic expansion of water on the outside. We've looked at the chemical buildup of smoke on the inside. So what does this all mean when the damage is just too catastrophic to repair? What if a chimney is leaning dangerously over a driveway, or like 30% of the bricks are completely destroyed?
When you hit that point, you're looking at a full demolition. But demolition isn't just a bunch of guys swinging sledgehammers.
I'd imagine not, especially not in Portland.
Right, especially in dense urban environments like Munjoy Hill. It requires surgical precision. You have to meticulously scaffold the structure, manage all the silica dust, and systematically lower the debris. It's a highly controlled dismantling to ensure structural safety.
And you really have to think about how the rest of the house plays into this.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a chimney does not exist in isolation. And the text highlights this really critical, often missed link. Gutters and chimneys are physically and functionally linked.
Wait, Gutters. How do gutters ruin a chimney?
Well, when a homeowner treats the roof systems as separate components, disaster strikes. Say you have overflowing gutters. That water can cause rotted fascia boards right near the chimney chase, and it channels a sheet of water directly onto the brickwork.
Force feeding the vertical sponge.
Exactly. It drastically accelerates the water absorption, completely bypassing any waterproofing you might have done, which leads directly to the spalling bricks we discussed earlier. You just cannot separate the health of the roofline from the safety of the hearth.
It's a completely interconnected ecosystem.
100%.
Well, let's wrap this up for you, our listener. We've been on quite a journey today. We started with the microscopic 9% expansion of freezing water inside porous clay. We looked at the highly specific geology of tuck pointing and why Portland cement destroys soft red bricks.
We also covered the thermodynamics of wood burning.
Right, the 3 stages of creosote from soot to that terrifying glazed tar. And finally, the realization that a house isn't just parts. It's a wholly interconnected ecosystem where a clogged gutter can literally bring down a brick chimney.
It really is wild when you put it all together. And, this raises an important question, something to really ponder based on what these sources revealed.
What's that?
Well, we learned that historic homes actually rely on naturally deteriorating lime mortar to survive,
Yeah.
and that older chimneys often hide these crumbling, unlined clay flues right behind their stately brick facades.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, as we walk through these beautiful historic neighborhoods, admiring that charming 19th century brick aesthetic.
Looking at those fortresses.
Right. How many of those beautiful structures are secretly standing on borrowed time, completely unaware of the invisible physics that are slowly dismantling their core from the inside out?
That is a haunting thought to leave on. Next time you look at a classic brick chimney, remember it might just be a sponge waiting to freeze. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.